I already made a video talking about the power creep and deadly assault. I thought it'd be interesting to discuss the topic from a different angle. Howdy, I'm Yojimbo Blade. When I mention the word power creep, there's a lot of subtext to it. Most players have their own internal understanding of what power creep is. It definitely exists in live service products, and it's not limited to video games. Just ask any Yu-Gi-Oh player. Usually when it's discussed, it's not about the game getting harder, it's about aspects of the game that become more powerful. And if you are a player who wants to beat the hardest challenges of the game, you need to find a way to obtain that power or defeat it. In a vacuum, power creep is not necessarily negative. In fact, it's kind of normal and healthy for games. But for gacha games, where the power creep is created by the developers, how this power creep is handled is what makes players concerned. For a very good reason. Sometimes this power creep is handled in a really cool way, but many times it's handled in a way that makes the game actively worse depending on who you ask. I promise this is a Zenless video, but here's a quick example about real life power creep. Introducing kickers in American football. You don't need to know anything about the game to understand this example. There are two vertical poles, and the kicker kicks the ball between them. That's called a field goal. The distance doesn't matter, but teams still want kickers who can accurately kick from far away. And a 50-yard field goal is insanely good and challenging. For metric people, that's around 45 meters. In the 2005 NFL season, there were 98 attempts at field goals greater than 50 yards, and only 49 of them were successful. Of course, this number is a bit skewed. There's no reason to have a kicker attempt a field goal if you think they'll miss, unless you're just desperate. Compare this to the 2025 NFL season as of recording. 196 attempts, 132 made. Essentially double the attempts and triple the successes. And the season is not over. So in summary, kickers now are so much better than they used to be. That's partly why in 2015, the NFL changed the rule to make kicking specific types of field goals, which they call point after attempts, harder. If you want all the nuances, you can find discussions about it elsewhere. The point is that the league wanted to adjust the rules in a specific way that made kicking more challenging while improving the overall health of the game. This is power creep, or at least a certain type of it. Now, obviously, Zenless is not the same as American football. That's crazy. So for a more relevant example of power creep, let's see how live service gacha games handle it. Introducing Fire Emblem Heroes. I chose this because I'm familiar with it, and it's pretty simple to discuss. The gameplay loop has the player move characters on a grid and hit enemies until they die. It's basically chess, but completely different. When the game launched in February of 2017, a character named Hector was one of the 5-star units. Very quickly, this is Hector's kit. Even if you've never played this game, this is all really simple stuff. Just a couple sentences, nothing too complicated. In summary, Hector was a very durable character that probably killed anyone who attacks him because of his unique counterattack range, but after that, his HP might be low enough that another character could just kill him. So about a year later, in June of 2018, the game releases a brand new version of Hector, and this is his kit. As you can see, this is a bit more complicated than the previous one. Everything is still neat and tidy, but there's a lot more that this character has to work with. Just at a quick glance, you can see that he engages with more mechanics. Managing his HP is back, but they also added a skill based on his proximity to allies, and a buff based on their different movement types. I've heard some players refer to this as feature creep. This is not simply, here's Hector again, but just 10% better. Instead, Hector is stronger, but also asks you to become more involved with the mechanics of gameplay without making it overwhelmingly complex. The important thing is that it asks players to interact with understandable game mechanics, and I think that's cool. So fast forward to December of 2024, they release another new version of Hector. There are many more, but this is the most recent one. And, oh, that's, what? What is this? It scrolls? Obviously, this is a lot to take in. Please don't try to read his kit. It has keywords that I will not explain. In short, this Hector still fills a similar role as he had back in 2017, big guy with a beat stick to counterattack enemies. However, there is so much going on in this kit that I would argue his level of power creep makes the game fundamentally less interesting. There are a bunch of fluctuating buffs and debuffs. Good luck keeping track of them. Unlike the previous version that asked players to build teams around a specific setup and play accordingly for his payoff, you can just ignore that. Just put Hector somewhere near your units, that's it. Despite everything you see on screen, you barely need to interact with this character when you use him. Now, obviously, there's a lot more nuance to this. The best players are rewarded for optimizing strategies and spending or whatnot. But for the casual player, they can just throw Hector onto any random team and he will do pretty much the same stuff. By making a character that interacts with so many different gameplay mechanics at the same time, they've somehow created a character that encourages players to not interact with these mechanics in any meaningful way. I think that's sad. So let's get back to Zenless. How is power creep handled in ZZZ? I used to think it was odd until I understood why. In the context of endgame challenges, enemies and stage buffs are designed to make newer agents feel more powerful. That makes financial sense. It incentivizes players to spend their resources to outmaneuver this power creep, and it rewards those players by making the game easier or something. Meanwhile, by looking at agents, I really like that Lighter is balanced around his niche. However, Dialyn's here, and Dialyn is just better than Lighter while being more generic. They could have made it so the ultimate she gives has its damage reduced by 20%, and she still would have been amazing. However, she's also 1 year after Lighter. My biggest issue with Dialyn is that, despite all of this, she's really fun. I am constantly interacting with the gameplay mechanics from building to playing. I guess the question is, since Lighter came out a year ago, is it reasonable to create a stun agent this individually powerful? While I don't like that she is as powerful as she is, I appreciate that she engages gameplay mechanics in a meaningful way. And I guess the devs realized that instead of just making stronger and stronger attack agents to put them on the same power level as Anomaly, they should just make the supports for attack agents more powerful while making them inaccessible for most Anomaly teams. At least for right now. Moving on to Banyue. There are many people who have been paying close attention to the leaks and are very upset that Banyue was made much weaker across the beta, to the point where his damage is lower than Yitari's, who was much simpler to use. On one hand, I think an agent like Yitari is really good for a lot of players. I think her gameplay loop is pretty well designed for what it is. I wish Yixuan's gameplay design was closer to hers in terms of risk and reward for her setup and payoff. The problem is that Yitari does not have to put in the same level of effort compared to Banyue, and still has a better damage payoff. So now I ask you, what is the payoff for playing Banyue well? I'm sure for many of you, your first thought is that the payoff for using a DPS should be DPS, right? That's obvious. But I would argue against that for Banyue. I don't actually think the real payoff is his damage. Hear me out. Billy is a pretty challenging agent to use well, but doesn't deal a lot of damage for how much effort you put in. Harumasa on release was probably the most challenging and punishing agent in the game, and that level of effort did not match his damage output, especially compared to an unbuffed Soldier Zero Ambi. So again, I ask, what is the payoff for playing Banyue well? I think for many players, the reason to play Banyue is because he is cool and challenging to play, an obstacle that the game dares you to overcome. In strategy and puzzle games, the payoff isn't simply the solution to the problem, the payoff is the entire process of solving the problem. That really doesn't have anything to do with his damage output directly. Now, at the very least, you want his damage to be adequate. However, I really don't want this damage to be incredibly high. There was an odd confession that I saw on Reddit recently, and that caught my attention. Take this with a grain of salt because I don't know how true this is, but the user claims that they became worse at playing the game after extensively using only Miyabi and Yixuan. Now, obviously, the best players understand how to play the game, but this does highlight my issue against bad power creep. agents that are very powerful with relatively little effort can de-incentivize players from engaging with gameplay mechanics. I am not claiming that Miyabi and Yixuan are inherently unhealthy, but I do make this claim. If the game rewards players for using agents with seemingly infinite iframes and does not provide incentives to improve beyond that, then the average player's skill will deteriorate. That point seems odd, so I will try to explain it. If I make a misplay with Billy, I instantly know, because most of the time, I get hit. Oh, he wasn't stunned yet. I pressed dodge! That's cheating! You can't take this from me! I'm the best Billy player in the world! He dodged! That's cheating! Dialyn's washed! I'm telling you, she's not good! Getting hit is really bad for Billy because he loses a lot of his buffs. If I make a misplay with Yixuan, I can't always tell what it was. I usually realize it because I've practiced the game enough to get a feel for it, but making a misplay with Yixuan can be hard to notice when a large part of her kit just makes her invincible, deals the most damage, and is easily accessible. So even if I am playing poorly, I'm not really punished for it compared to other agents. And punishing players is an effective way to help them become better at understanding games, especially action games like Zenless. Now, this is the part of a discussion where someone might try to pretend they aren't gatekeeping, but I won't, because I am gatekeeping. I want to set a boundary that I believe is healthy for the continuation of the game that I enjoy playing. And this is that boundary. The damage or buffs from newer agents should not continue to outperform every other previous agent. If the devs want to break that boundary, there had better be a compelling reason for it. Something that encourages the player to interact with the mechanics of the game in an interesting way. I know, I get it. Big numbers feel good, big number go boom. That is fun. But let me ask something. To the players who recently invested into a DPS that you have fun playing, if that DPS did 3% less damage, would you have less fun playing them? If you have recently invested into a support, would you still use that support if their buffs or whatnot were made 3% weaker? To be more blunt, does your enjoyment of the game come from the process of playing the game? Or does your enjoyment mainly come from seeing the numbers go up? This might be like a journey or destination kind of argument. There are games that I play where the point is to always make the numbers go up, and those games are really fun. But I don't believe that mindset is healthy for the continuation of Zenless Zone Zero, especially since it's already funded by gambling. This is why I really like that Banyue is not overwhelmingly powerful. It gives me hope that the devs understand some players just want to use a character that is challenging to play well because they enjoy overcoming those challenges. I really enjoy playing Billy because he provides a fun challenge for me to solve during his gameplay, and at least in my opinion, he does enough damage to justify it. I really don't want the devs to randomly buff Billy's DPS by 10%. He doesn't need buffs, and that's not the reason I play him. Which brings me to Ye Shengguang. I do my best to avoid gameplay leaks. I will read kits and descriptions, but I do not want to see their gameplay. That spoils a lot of the fun for me. So when I speak about this next topic, I have some level of ignorance. If playing Shengguang is as simple as holding a button and watching her deal a billion damage, then I will probably not enjoy her gameplay. That sounds incredibly dull, so I hope she has more going on in her kit than just that. She will be marketed as a Void Hunter, so she is going to deal a bunch of damage while being simple to play at a beginner level. That's fine. I just hope that she is mechanically engaging and isn't invincible on practically everything. That's an unhealthy way to make the game easier. I would prefer her game plan have some meaningful risk reward for her setup and payoff, a game plan that isn't only tied to spending money on other supports, or the devs creating hyper-shielded enemies and buffs that will disappear after 6 months. That last part is not some conspiracy, it will happen. Almost every new boss released since 2.0 has been designed to make Miyabi feel awful, relative to where she was before 2.0. Don't be surprised when the bosses made in 2.5 and onward make Yi Xuan feel awful, or when the bosses after 3.0 make Xiong Guang feel awful. And since I'm already mentioning bosses, let's briefly talk about it. Most of the newer ones are designed around specific niches in a way that punishes other playstyles, and I don't like that. This is a more personal problem because I like to solve endgame challenges in skillful yet silly ways, and I know that really doesn't matter for most players. I struggle to get a B rank against the Thrall using the worst team in the game because of how the fight is designed, and this same team could comfortably get a B rank against the Defiler. That's lame, because I like playing the bad teams. And the endgame bosses releasing in 2.5 probably won't be much different. They will be designed to shill Xiong Guang while making other playstyles feel terrible, which is incredibly unhealthy. It's one thing for the devs to reward players for using new agents. They can do that without actively punishing players for using other agents or playstyles. That's just unnecessary. Players are still going to spend money on the game because they like the character writing, designs, or gameplay. To briefly summarize my position about power creep, if power creep makes the game less interactive, less immersive, less creative, then it's bad. If power creep makes the gameplay more interactive, more immersive, more creative, then it's good. I would love to see bosses or agents that encourage creative playstyles and different teams. I do not care that Xiong Guang will deal more damage than Banyue. What I care about is that agent game plans are well designed and reasonably balanced around their intended purpose. If Dialyn were slightly weaker, she would still be incredible. Banyue is balanced around the idea that he is supposed to be challenging to play, so the ones that use him will practice a lot. From a business perspective, those players are a niche group and probably already spending time and money on the game. Because of that, the devs aren't going to cater to them as much when there's a lower return on investment. I am one of them, and I'm okay with that. I try to spend very little anyway. Xiong Guang is balanced around the idea that she is supposed to be overpowered and simple to play. If that balance means she is ignoring everything that enemies do while barely making any meaningful decisions, then that's bad. It's possible to make a character simple to play, hard to master, with a meaningful gap between those two states. And I hope that's what happens. Something for both casual and competitive players to enjoy. If you want to see more of this type of content, let me know in the comments or become a YouTube member. Subscribe if that's what you feel like, or share this around if you want others to see this. I really enjoy this game and would love to see other players talk about it critically, yet fairly. Shoutouts to my super sponsors, SuperBro and I Love My PC Necros. Thank you guys so much. My name is Yojimbo Blade, and I hope you have a blessed day. See you soon.